Cybercriminals are using social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Keeping up with security issues across thousands of web assets without the right approach to web application security is a daunting task. Get ahead with web vulnerability scanning automation from NetSparker, a leader in dynamic and interactive application security testing known for its ease of use and accurate results. Detect a wide range of vulnerabilities in all legacy and modern web applications, address security bugs at scale by automating the confirmation process, automatically prioritize vulnerabilities, and assign actionable tickets to the right developers in their native workflows for rapid remediation. For more information on how to scale application security with ease, visit securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul Security Weekly. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through the 8th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista Hotel. We're excited to announce our first round of speakers, which includes Dave Kennedy, Alyssa Miller, who you heard on the first segment, O'Shea Bowens, Marina Chiavata, Patrick Cobble, Chris Eng, Eric Escobar, Kevin Johnson, and Justin Kohler. Visit securityweekly.com/unlocked to register today. Also, if you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts and or technical trainings, they're available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now the news.
Are those webcasts like zombie movies?
No.
I was going to say you should watch them just in case they happen.
You should watch them just in case. Yes, it happens.
It happens.
Where would you gentlemen like to start?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Story number 1.
I was going to say, Larry's story number 2. When you got RickRoll in the news, you've got it covered.
Larry's story number 2, RickRolling the definitive oral history.
This one was, I stumbled on this one, kind of interestingly. There was an article on Boing Boing that said, "Oh my God, this YouTube video has been watched over 1 billion times." I'm like, what?
By people who didn't want to watch it, which is hilarious.
but the article that I saw led you to believe that it was the Rick Astley Never Gonna Give You Up video. Mm-hmm. And there was something broken in the content. So I clicked on the link and it brought me to the oral history of the definitive oral history of RickRolling. And I'm like, whoa. And 1, whoa, this is cool. And 2, it wasn't actually the video. It was some other video that was completely lame about an adaptation of some book from the 1800s on a cartoon. And I'm like, what?
Oh, they have the dude that did the first Rickroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, what? Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yep.
Lot of Rickrolling. When did Rickrolling start? When was the first Rickroll?
2006.
Wow.
Yep. Duck rolling was 2005, and that didn't apparently stick around too well. 2006, I think. 2008 was the big uptick.
I think much like Chuck Norris with the Chuck Norris facts, that Rick Astley kind of takes it in stride, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. What's the other meme that I saw the other day was that Never Gonna Give You Up has been more effective for teaching cybersecurity education programs than any cybersecurity education program in history.
The song does get stuck in your head, though.
Like, you click on the link and you get trolled. Like, that's more effective than any cybersecurity awareness training that anybody's ever conducted.
Yep. I'm gonna have to go read that whole article now.
Yeah, it's interesting history and how many times and how popular it became, and and still very effective.
Well, it works. Did I tell you about the time I used that my neighbor's I hate my neighbors thing from Josh to Rickroll everybody attending and present by creating a fake AT&T Wi-Fi, and everybody's like, "I've watched the video 3 times. Could you fix the network?" It's like, what are you doing on AT&T Wi-Fi? There's nothing AT&T in this building.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good old I love my neighbors.
Adrian Sanabria gave us an interesting story in our Slack channel that from a stolen laptop to inside the company network. You've used some of these tools.
Yep, and it was funny. And this was very relevant to the Sec 566 release, in that we use very similar tools to obtain the first key to getting access to the stuff. So the TLDR on this one was the company was given a pen test company was given a laptop and said, "You just stole this laptop. Use it to break into our company." And they said, "Oh, okay, cool. We'll take your money and try to do that." And turns out the laptop was BitLocker encrypted and needed.
No, wait. I have a stupid question. I used to, and I haven't because I haven't done this in a while. You used to be able to boot on a USB thumb drive, but since it's BitLocker encrypted, you can't change the password.
Right. You can't get to the system to change any local passwords. You can't get access to the local disk and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
But what they found was that you could boot the laptop up normally, and it would go into a login screen. And then you had to log into the laptop.
And once you log in, that's when it does the decryption.
No, it has to do the decryption before that. Because
do you have to enter a password to do that? Because
that's the rub.
On Linux, I had in previous. I used to have to enter a password as it boots up.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the rub. In this particular case, the organization had done everything right. Except they had enabled convenience mode, which meant that you didn't need to enter the decryption password. So once it's turned on and it boots, it decrypts the hard drive so that you can boot an operating system.
Couldn't you use some kind of DMA attack to get past the login?
No, because they had Intel VT BIOS setting enabled.
Yep.
So
no
the
DMA
Intel
attacks.
VT BIOS setting, DMA is then sandboxed at that point.
Oh,
so again, they did everything right. They had
Yep.
BIOS settings were password protected. You had boot order set properly. Secure boots enabled. They're using TPM 2.0 with full disk encryption via BitLocker. So all of the normal like bypasses really don't have any effect. And that pre-boot pin to begin the decryption process so that the decryption key remains in the TPM and handles the decryption via the pin is not the default setting for BitLocker. That's kind of an additional security.
Yep. So they basically enabled convenience mode, so you didn't have to enter that pin.
Yep.
So you could just boot right up, and you steal the laptop, it's off, drive is encrypted.
Convenience, security, playing that balance.
Pick two. So if you think about that boot process, the key to decrypt the drive is stored in the TPM. The TPM has to send that key to the drive.
Right. Because it's firmware on the drive that does the decryption.
Yep.
Okay.
So that said, how does it send it? How does it send an encryption key to the drive? Well, it does so over some internal bus. And in this case, it was using a serial bus called SPI.
Yeah.
Unencrypted. So it sends the key to decrypt the drive over the serial bus on the system that you have physical access to. So you open it up and you observe the SPI from the TPM to the onboard flash where the key is stored and all that good fun stuff. And there was even you get the key.
Right.
And then you can provide that key to other utilities to remove the drive and boot it under other systems. Then you have access to the drive.
I know Bus Pirate, right, is also a tool to do that.
So Bus Pirate would give you
it's a little old.
But still very valid. So, and arguably...
It's an older code, but it checks out.
But yeah, exactly. Arguably a better supported than some of the new stuff, which doesn't have a lot of support and stuff around it. Ask me how I know this. So that would give you absolutely the ability to do some injection. The sniffing with SPI, with the Bus Pirate, not so much. You'd want to use a logic analyzer for something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now the speed, I took a class on this. or I sat in on a portion of a class on this, which is why you can tell some of my knowledge is incomplete in this particular subject matter. Tom Liston was actually one of my instructors for said class back in the day. One of the things I do remember is that when you're doing this type of stuff and either transmitting and or receiving on internal buses on the board, whether it's an embedded system or a PC-based computer, is the speed. Like there's certain buses where your hardware and software like just can't keep up because it's so fast. But that wasn't the case here either.
Yeah, absolutely not. And for the most part now, the tools are good enough to be able to keep up with those speed.
I gotcha. Okay.
And that said, they could also, just like we had serial back in the old days, they could be of one of multiple speeds, and you kind of need to know what that is.
Right.
But if you have hands-on to the hardware, and you will likely see the hardware, you can see the chips, you can see the markings on the chips, and you can, in many cases, find the specification sheets for those chips to learn which speeds they currently default at or are capable of doing.
Yeah, there's like a model number, a revision, like all the information you need to figure it out. Right?
Yep. And typically using fairly common stuff. So, and gotta love documentation. Read RTFM, read the fine manual.
But they did this on the CMOS chip. You said something about that.
So they utilized the CMOS chip because it's not as small as the TPM chip for the pins, but they were sharing a lot of the same pins to pass that.
Same bus.
Same bus. So same bus.
Yeah. So the TPM was super tiny, and they were having a hard time getting like their test clips on the TPM.
Right.
But there
like
were
a flash chip where you're supposed to jumper those two pins on the W254G.
Yeah.
And then you mash them together.
Kind of like that.
Create a short.
Yep. But yeah, getting the little clips on there are potentially hard, and you clip them together and you short stuff.
Which, I mean, they're pretty brave. I mean, I hope they had some kind of clause in their contract that, like, if they busted this laptop.
I'm sure.
We would always require two because we always would mess something up.
Two per tester because you're going to break one, and sometimes depending on the device, maybe four per tester.
Yeah, because if you mash one of those pins, you create a short, and then you're screwed.
Yep, and then you're getting out
extract the chip, right?
Yep, yeah. And or then you're getting out the microscope and fixing your F-ups with a really fine point soldering iron or a reflow, some hot air rework. Or ask me how I know this, right, Tyler?
Yeah. So once they had the decryption key, like obviously they could pull the hard drive, decrypt the hard drive, and then there was a pre-auth VPN for always on VPN for Cisco Protect, right? That then. Well, if they have access to the hard drive with the decryption keys, they just did a simple replace on utilman, got sticky keys, which gave them system access, where they were then able to pre-auth to the organization on boot. So they just put the sticky keys in there, got system, and once they had that system level command shell and the pre-auth connected the VPN in, then they were obviously on the corporate network, and you can obviously do stuff with file shares. Get user groups, utilize some of the
you're a machine on the domain
Nightmare, Hive Nightmare, any of the Active Directory issues you have today.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
It seems like the hardest part was getting that decryption key because that seemed to take them several days. The rest felt pretty fast.
That would be pretty fast if like you don't run into issues with hardware. You always run into some kind of an issue. Like if they had the clip. Right, for the Escalate logic analyzer, if they had a chip clip where they were dumping the SPI, that makes it a lot faster, and they're not trying to play with those off the CMOS. There's a bunch of ways that, like I said, this typically could be done in less than 30 minutes
if you have
someone that's good.
If you have the right tools, the problem is that in many of the cases,
you know what the right tools are until you open it up.
You don't know what the right tools are until you open it up, and there's probably 30 to 50 different potential like connectors you could have for this one thing, and they're just not cost effective necessarily to buy them all. Lord knows I've tried. So I mean, if you had the right tools, you could have had this done in probably 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, they spent a little bit of time on the Solea Logic Analyzer, the decryption module within inside there that looks at the modulation and the different SPI buses as the data is going across, can typically pull out via regex decryption key, but that gets mangled between versions, different hardware, different implementation, and so they actually had to do a pull request and change the code that was looking at the decryption key for the Soleil logic.
Yep. So there was they went to go start doing the manual analysis of looking for that key on the bus, but they found that there was an open source plugin for the Soleil logic stuff that would go, oh yeah, no, it's right here.
Isn't that Mike Poor's like click your heels 3 times and someone probably has written something pretty close?
Ask for it and you shall receive. Yep.
Speaking of Microsoft stuff, there was a couple of Microsoft stories in here. Tyler, I had sent you one. Which one did I send you now?
All of them?
There's a bunch, so we can talk about PetitPotam or PetitPotam, whatever the hell they've called it.
PetitPotam?
You should probably get a cream for that, Tyler.
PetitPotam.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys like Russian or you play on potato. I don't know.
PetitPotam allows takeover of Windows domains.
Yeah, so it's very, very similar to kind of the spooler aspect of what we've been looking at. This allows uncredentialed user to take over the domain controller using an RPC channel or an API call. So EFS RPC, which is for the EFS file system. So there's a name pipe on there that you can abuse and this API to kind of take over the domain by doing a relay attack. And so you can set up NTLM relays to different HTTP servers in certain configurations, very similar to the certificate authority relay attacks we've seen prior, and utilize this in order to gain a machine hash or a user hash if it's configured to be able to be relayed. And there's an HTTP service there that it can be abused in order to receive that NTLM. And there's no way to actually fix this unless you go to LDAP channel binding assigning or disable NTLM completely. And there's a bunch of attacks. You can do downgrade attacks. You can do the classic relay attacks and gain credentials that way. So there's pretty much an unlimited set of paths forward with this that are very, very dangerous and have huge implications, and it's not going to be fixed. And there's no good way. You can't just disable a service like the print spooler one. This has there's some API blocking you can do, but that's very difficult, and that still doesn't fully mitigate this attack. So this is probably one of the more dangerous ones that I've actually seen.
Can you wipe out NTLM altogether in your environment and go to Kerberos, right? For all the
you can, but you have a lot of legacy applications and integrations from other vendors that may rely on that. And there's a lot of places that have done like SMPv2 with the signing and channel binding, which would mitigate this to an extent. And if you get rid of NTLM altogether, again, legacy, like it's very difficult to do. I've not seen many.
I was going to say,
medium-sized organizations do that.
Yeah, have you seen places just wipe out NTLM altogether? Because there's usually some kind of app or service somewhere, especially in larger organizations, that is going to stop working.
Right.
No, and again, this is very difficult because this is an RPC interface that is on by default by design, so that there's not necessarily a vulnerability there. This is just a bug in the way that the encrypting file system actually remotely accesses the file system in order to do certain maintenance actions, right? And so it's doing it over system, obviously, and it has to do that authentication. So there's API calls and functions within inside of that are there by design. So I don't think this is going to be addressed, and this is actually really, really dangerous. If anybody gets access to almost any domain join computer, you can coerce that computer to perform some form of relay or find a system in order to do relaying, which has big implications.
Wow. And Microsoft hasn't fixed this?
No. There's no good way to fix this. Again, this is kind of functionality. This is kind of by design. Yeah.
It's crazy.
So, but there are two sets of fixes too. There's fixes for your domain controller, and if you have certificate authorities, there's a separate set of fixes for them to reduce or mitigate the risk. You can't completely avoid it, but you can turn it down. So you have to remember to do both fixes. I don't think they'll come up with a patch anytime soon.
Can you easily
I don't see a way
Can
to
you
do
detect it easily?
No.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about low-level pipe RPC calls to the system. So unless you're doing like low-level telemetry gathering for certain pipe names,
Sysmon doesn't get down to that level, does it? Because it's not really it's.
You could do something like pipe viewer or with some Sysmon magic maybe, or some custom telemetry maybe. I don't know. That's very, very low level at that API for those RPC calls.
Right. There's like deep in the guts of Windows, essentially.
Yeah, I've not seen a great write-up on detection yet. There's some mitigation things and some people offering some ideas, but from what I've been testing, like this is a pretty good one.
This is a win for attackers.
Yeah, this is a pretty and there's good POCs out there. Like it's already implemented in many tools, and the POCs are fairly straightforward. The underlying concept's a little bit, it gets a little bit into the weeds if you don't know RPC, but overall it's fairly straightforward attack. There's nothing crazy about it because it's using the functions that are designed with inside of that RPC API call that are just there for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question.
Remember how IT staff argued it would be okay to have a read-only domain controller in your DMZ, or put holes from DMZ out back to your domain so that they could talk?
Yeah, I would be pulling all of my read-only domain controllers out of the DMZ right now.
Thanks.
So question. In a case like this, how do you sort of, let's say shift left, let's say shift laterally, I don't care what you call it. How do you change gears and start investigating and analyzing not how to fix something like this, but how to detect it? And how do you prioritize those two activities?
I would say the first thing that you're doing in order to do your detection, like you're building that security model in the beginning. If you do have a business use case or business risk that you're accepting, like as part of the build before it gets implemented, or as part of the planning strategy to implement, you're building those detections and capabilities around key assets. Like when you start to focus on, take outside of technology. If you focus on how does the business make money, what are the key assets and business pieces that we have to protect, and start building a concentric ring around that and building controls, that defense in depth layered out from there, then it starts to be less of this hodgepodge, connect things together, mitigate this risk, mitigate this TTP. You're not going after those individual TTPs or IOCs. You're actually working on the behavior and protecting the things that matter. You're looking at the business risk and the core concentric things or data points that are important.
Essentially what you're saying, Tyler, is if someone successfully executes this particular attack, you've got to detect what you believe they're going to do next that you can detect as anomalous, because you're probably not going to prevent or detect certain attack vectors.
Yeah, so what are they going to do after they gain system-level access on a domain controller? They're probably going to dump the domain, use DC Shadow, DC Sync, any of those kind of fundamental things that a lot of places do. They're going to do that against your DC. So you should be detecting that. You should be able to quickly react and remediate that. If you don't have anything automated, then you have a response plan in place to begin doing triage and mitigating that damage, resetting all the passwords, reconfiguring the domain. Like that's a pretty bad day for most places. And honestly, that's probably worst case scenario. But you kind of have to think like that because again, if you're one exploit away and you don't have that defense in depth and or monitoring capability built into the plan for things like a full domain compromise, then you've kind of already lost.
Oh boy.
Well, let's talk about Microsoft Teams blocking phishing attempts. Safe links. How good is safe links? That's a Microsoft Defender for Office 365, previously known as Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. That's a feature in Microsoft's Defender service, basically, that determines if a link is
integrated into Teams.
And now it's integrated into Teams. But basically, this service, Safe Links, tells me if a URL is malicious or not. And is that Microsoft's own threat intel, Tyler, or?
It's taking the telemetry of a lot of their ATP, all of the stuff that they're gathering from Defender. It's the same kind of threat feed, signature feed, and heuristics that Defender is getting from the ATP stuff.
Yeah, okay.
They've integrated a lot of that analytics and SafeLink analysis, even on the back end for anomalous detection or secondary looking. It does take a little bit of time. You click a link, you obviously are getting that link scanned. It's validating whether it's seen it before.
Yep.
If you have it turned all the way up, it's going to do some more advanced things based on your subscription. So it's pretty good, and there's some things in there that cause some real issues to attackers. And it's integrated now into Teams. Like, this is a part of O365 and has been integrated into certain subscription levels for your Office or Outlook, mail suite.
So this is something you should turn on. If you've got Office 365, right, you should turn on. Make sure SafeLink is turned on.
For it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is actually being turned on by default for many of the subscription levels. Like I actually noticed it happen today. So I don't know if that's a default setting or they're applying that to certain subscription levels, or it's just enhancing the capability that they've already had.
Yep. So my question for this, Tyler, it's quote billed as time of click verification. So is it verifying those URLs in real time as you click on them, or is it providing something prior to those links making, say, to your inbox or to Teams and so forth?
That's a good question.
So the way I understand it, it's doing a validation against current known signatures, hashes, variants of domains from other telemetry, and if there's anything, I believe there's some live heuristics for certain levels, and I don't know if that's actually integrated into this.
Okay.
But it will actually run it in a sandbox and explode the link and see if it goes, other places, has different aspects within it.
Yep. So sort of
very similar, kind of like FireEye or one of those that the next gen firewalls was using.
My question was sort of along the lines of, like, if it's doing real time, where is it getting that real time analysis and data from? Like, you think old school,
ATP.
like it's going to go get it from the internet somewhere? Mm-hmm. And like, what if my host is on a network that is limited into where it can obtain data from? Like, it can get my email.
Yeah, but like, do you have to be Windows or can you be Linux or Mac running Teams?
Oh, yeah.
No, you can be Linux or Mac, but if you are not connected to the internet, in fact, there was a company that demonstrated this, the telemetry values that it gets are significantly lower. It's based on what's built into whatever subscription you have and whatever your client has for signatures.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so that actually provides a lower value, and there are bypasses. In fact, there was some interesting heuristics they showed to be able to bypass that by disconnecting the internet prior to loading. But from a phishing standpoint, the likelihood becomes much lower unless you're doing, like, you got internal access, right, and you're doing it from an already phished user.
Yep. Okay.
Let's see. No, any more Microsoft stuff while we're on the topic?
Apple 0 day that Microsoft found was really cool.
So Microsoft found a 0 day in Apple.
Yeah.
In March, but didn't report it. But then somehow it got fixed.
Yeah.
Yep.
It got reported by somebody else.
Oh.
And it's still unsure of, like, what the vulnerability is, who reported it. It was reported as anonymous. The patch is very, very. It doesn't really say much. And the way that the original researcher posted it was he posted a SHA-512 hash of his original description and POC at a point in time, so he didn't have to disclose the thing while he was still researching it, but still had an attributable timeline.
Like, hey, in April, I found this thing. Here's the hash of my file that contains my proof of concept. Put that on Twitter. It's out there in the public.
Yep.
And then later releases it. 6 months later releases it's like, see, I had that first, because you take that file and you release it. And that's kind of what happened there.
That's pretty
Which
crazy.
is super smart. Like, it's a way to, like, not be like, yeah, I found that, and not have any kind of proof. And it's just people, like, that's kind of a dick move to say, like, after you didn't release it, right? Mm-hmm. It was kind of an interesting way to just kind of, I was looking at the same thing. Nice job. I didn't post it. I didn't finish my research. Obviously someone did and patched it. So I think it's interesting because this is obviously fairly serious for them to release a patch, a single patch in an emergency patch for Mac OS, Pad iOS. I think pretty much everything new. which means it's probably at the kernel level. So that may have been, there was some rumors that this may have been some of the recent jailbreak stuff that can do just about any phone. This may have had something to do with that someone found and didn't really release yet. So still unsure of what it is.
And Apple's being cagey about it, probably because of the jailbreak issue, and because they're Apple.
And they're Apple.
Yep. They've come so far, yet they're still so far away.
Right.
Yeah, it was
all
released
they
under
said
CVE.
is, IO mobile frame buffer. There's a buffer overflow, basically, a memory corruption issue. Excuse me, and they fixed the memory handling. It's like an arbitrary code with kernel privilege escalation. Okay.
Yep. Hey, kernel, you said it right there.
Oh, the magic word.
Oh, speaking of memory corruptions and stuff, my story number 6, the common weakness enumeration from MITRE.
Yep.
Produced a top 25 list of weaknesses in software ranked from 1 to 25. I'm not sure how they probably based that on CVEs, I would imagine, in terms of the vector, and that's how they came up with the top 25 list, I believe.
Maybe?
Not necessarily.
Oh, the previous 2 calendar years, dangerous.
Most common, most impactful.
Data found, yeah, it's data. So they're basing this on data found in the NVD and CVSS with CVE records, right? So, like, basically, this is the 2020 ranking for all CVEs that were released.
Yep.
What was the top attack vector or exploit vector? So you get out of bounds right. Was number 1. Cross-site scripting, number 2, out of bounds read, input validation, use after free. Now, we can talk about the list and the ranking and all that stuff. What I found was really cool is when you start digging into the CWE, you can click on the individual CWE IDs, and MITRE gives you this huge write-up. And if you scroll, and the great description, by the way, they show, this one I clicked on was out of bounds right. And they give you examples in like C, and like this is what the vulnerability looks like in code.
Yep.
But what I thought, if you scroll all the way down on these, is references.
Yep.
And the historical references, I was like, if you're getting into InfoSec and you want to understand vulnerabilities and how they're exploited, especially within software, this is a great start your weekend reading off by going through. Now, take the top 25, right? Start at the top. This is the most common one. I believe I clicked on the first one was out of bounds right? The first reference you're going to read is LF1, Smashing the Stack for Fun and Profit, Frac issue 49 from 1996. You should read that. That's still valid today. You should read that.
Especially when you start going to ARM architecture and IoT and IIoT systems.
Yep.
Because ASLR, and what's that?
And a lot of references to a book. I believe it was a book. Michael Howard, David LeBlanc, and John Viega, 24 Deadly Sins of Software Security, was listed in there as one of the other. That was a pretty common theme when I was just going through these. David Litchfield, Chris Anley, John Heisman, Bill Grindley, The Database Hacker's Handbook, Defending Database Servers from 2005. A bunch of other authors, including Gary McGraw, published a book called The 7 Pernicious Kingdoms, A Taxonomy of Software Security Errors. That was interesting.
Wow.
And there's
From
a link
2005.
to 2005, and there's a link to that paper based on a NIST workshop. So, really cool weekend reading.
Yeah. Now that said, looking at this list of the 25 most dangerous software weaknesses, we need to revise our T-shirt.
Which one?
The I drink because you don't change your default passwords.
I drink because your developers don't know what out of bounds rights are.
I think we need to change that to I drink because of CWE 287, 798, 260, 862, and 276. You may also want to do 200 and 522.
Yep.
So improper authentication, use of hard-coded credentials, missing authorization, incorrect default permissions, exposure of sensitive information to an unauthorized actor, and insufficiently protected credentials. In that order.
You can really go down a rabbit hole here. There's a lot of reading.
Yeah.
A lot of cool stuff here.
That correlates to your story 13 too, with CISA releasing the top routinely exploited vulnerabilities list.
Correct.
Which was interesting from the government data that they've gathered.
Yeah, so like, do we just patch based on what's being exploited?
Well, that's kind of where I was thinking. I mean, like, this is interesting but dangerous in my opinion, because it reinforces bad habits potentially. I only have to do the ones that mean something.
Right. The word "only" there is the dangerous part. Right.
See, and a lot of these aren't even like the Active Directory or Microsoft or any of the big ones, like the recent ones. Like a lot of these are like 2019, 2020, 2018.
Yeah, they're recent.
Most of these are most of these are like
VPNs
external stuff.
For the most targeted vulnerabilities in 2020, according to CISA, affected remote work in terms of VPNs or cloud-based technologies.
We didn't call that back in January.
Right?
Nope. Not at all.
And while you guys have been riffing, I've been kind of reading through it, trying to figure out okay, how did they come up with what is the criteria? It's pretty involved. I mean, a lot of this article talks about how they came up with the scoring. It's not just
the CISA one.
The CISA one. My story number 13. Yeah.
Well, no, I was going back to the CWE
okay.
one.
And the other one too. Yeah.
But because it's MITRE, I figured it was probably based, to some degree on attack, where they're not just pulling the CVSS scores, or they're also looking at, is this out in the wild? Are people using it? And how, they in the article, the C in CWE is common. That has to do with how often it's showing up, but they're also factoring in things like, what's the consequence? How impactful is exploitation of the weakness? So it could be really bad vulnerability, but it doesn't really get you anywhere at the end of the day. So there's a lot to it. Sorry for backing up a little bit.
No. Yep. No, yeah, the two links right there definitely relate to each other, and I think it's something everyone should check out.
The other one, looking back at the MITRE one, the CWE one, the 2020 rank change, I think, is also pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's see. Improper neutralization of special elements used in OS command injection is up 5 points. Missing authentication for critical functions is up 13 places. And incorrect default permissions is up 22 places.
Yikes.
Like, these to me seem kind of like some of the basics we've been harping on for a long time. And the fact that they've crept up to be in the top 25.
Yeah.
Or crept up from low 25 to high 25.
Yeah, you could correlate these two lists, right? Like the Citrix was arbitrary code execution. Like, you go look up that CVE, like what was the vector? Was it an integer overflow? And then go read it. Like, it's a pretty cool exercise, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I have another concern, but I'm a little bit torn on this one because it sort of makes sense. But my concern is you as an organization are still looking at an external source to tell you how good or bad things are, to hopefully elicit action on your part to fix, mitigate, patch, or whatever, where philosophically I think you should be doing that, but you need to have sources, and you need to have relationships and external feeds into that. So I'm kind of torn on, do you really want to let somebody else tell you what's bad for your environment, or do you want to take this information and then apply it to your own rudimentary formula for even if it's simply if it's in this segment of our network, we're going to deal with it. If it's over here, we're not. Something.
Yeah.
You need to. I mean, you can't patch everything all at once, so you do need to have some sort of priority. Your priority shouldn't be defined, to your point, Jeff, I agree, by external sources, right? They should help you prioritize based on the elements and factors that exist in your environment. But you should really be patching as close to everything as you can. You should be developing a program that has good hygiene, right? That you can roll through and fix things and get to a point where you can be proactive to it. But to help in some of those priorities, I think these lists certainly help.
Yeah,
It's not done. If you patch the top 25, you're not done.
So Jeff, to your example and to use the examples we just talked about here, from the CISA list, the top routinely exploited CVE was the Citrix one, CVE 2019-781.
That was a path traversal,
which was CWE 22, which is featured nowhere on MITRE's list.
The other
in
list,
either the top 25 or in the top 40.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you can't. There's no formula as for how you should be. The priority.
I'm going to choose the list where the thing that I have to decide on doesn't show up, because that means I don't have.
Jeff, you've been in PCI too long, man.
Well, I was going to bring up PCI.
You said the P word
briefly, and you started it. Although I was about to go there. My initial thought, who cares what all these organizations are saying? PCI has a different measuring stick, and you have to do it. But what PCI also does, somebody posted on LinkedIn something about vulnerability management, and I was trying to find it, and of course I can't now in the pinch. But it was some sort of comment about the importance of vulnerability management, and I think they even mentioned PCI and how to do vulnerability management with PCI. And my comment was, it's a very common interpretation of PCI, but it's wrong, essentially, because PCI since 2010, when version 2 came out, introduced into the standard the idea of develop your own risk ranking for vulnerabilities in your organization, and then act accordingly based on patches that get published, based on scan results, penetration test results. It all ties back to this teeny tiny little requirement that says develop your own risk ranking system. Nobody does that
because it's hard.
It's hard, but all these places that bitch and complain about, there's too many vulnerabilities. How can we prioritize? How can we get them all? Just make them go away. Find me another scan engine that's going to filter them out so I don't find them. Give me this thing so it's a list that I can say, I only have to do these. I get it at one level, but you're still missing an opportunity, I guess, is my bottom line.
But like if you're doing a really good job at patch management and regular maintenance and hygiene, then your scan results shouldn't have that many vulnerabilities where you're overwhelmed with the priority. No.
Yeah, that's very pie in the sky, Paul. But when your patch management program starts with the scan, you've got a problem there.
Yeah. I can sit in my pulpit all day long with my 30 or so systems I have to take care of, right?
Right. But many people think that vulnerability management programs start with a scan. Now, in a PCI context, and I've said this before, the scanning requirement's way down in 11. Which 11 requirement is it, Paul?
Do you remember? 11.3 is the pen test requirement.
Right, so before that,
11.2 is 2.
I was going to say 11. I was going to say 11.2.
We're learning, Larry.
I know. I've been listening to Jeff too much. I think Jeff's been sleeping under my pillow at night, and I've been learning through endocytosis.
Yeah, you drool a lot.
I do.
You're
welcome.
You scan first, and you pen test later, but that's all under requirement 11, which is doing all the security things to monitor and detect and catch everything that's wrong with everything else that you've done, where the patch management's way earlier in requirement 6. And again, it starts with develop your own risk ranking system. Figure out how you're going to classify vulnerabilities so that you can respond accordingly. And I made the statement on LinkedIn, it's like the PCI Council, and I don't always give them credit for stuff, but it's and I don't know if it was intentional, but it's like they came up with the idea of vulnerability prioritization 11 years ago.
I just want to point out that one of the works referenced in many of the CWEs about these attack vectors was published in 2003, Writing Secure Code by Michael Howard and David LeBlanc. Second edition looks like it might have been 2009. You can buy it, which is pretty funny, in paperback for $4.67, but by the time you pay shipping, it's $21.99.
What?
And one of the reviews says that the book is good but kind of dated. And I'm like, is it? Is it?
Wait, which story is this?
I don't think it was a story.
Oh.
It was in one of the CWE descriptions.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Many of the descriptions of the CWEs in the reference section reference this book for like the ones in that top 25 list. It's kind of interesting.
But are the stories dated?
No, the book. He said the book was dated.
Like, yeah, the book. But is the book and the schemes and the stories dated? Like listening to Masters of Deception.
Yeah. No,
And-
it's not. Yeah.
And I'm listening to the part where like they're totally taking over TimeNet and like they have all of this access. And we go back to the IoT and the ICS stuff, Tyler, and it's like, but how do you know? They're all over your network, and how do you know? Like, I think some of these stories still hold a lot of weight and such. And are your detection methods capable? Like, do you have to build something with a soldering iron and build this room full of equipment, and then the modem changes and everything goes out the window?
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is if you look at CW 787 out of bounds right, that's referenced in a 2020 CVE. It's a chained on a mobile Bluetooth implementation, and the book Writing Secure Code references it that was originally published in 2002, according to this. So
Is it really dated?
add to cart.
Yep.
So, should we be in a real shooting war over cyber attacks? Now, I just want to point out, I found this really interesting. I read this article. I did a little bit of research. So the statement from the president was that we affirm a decision as to when a cyber attack would lead to the invocation of Article 5 would be taken by the North Atlantic Council on a case-by-case basis. I had to read that a few times and then go, wait, North Atlantic Council, that's NATO, essentially. That's a council developed by NATO. Then I'm like, what is Article 5? And I'm like, oh, the North Atlantic Treaty, Article 5. Article 5 provides that if a NATO ally is the victim of an armed attack, each and every other member of the alliance will consider this an act of violence as an armed attack against all members and will take the actions it deems necessary to assist the ally attacked. Now, go back to the president's statement that a cyber attack would lead to the invocation of Article 5 will be taken by the North Atlantic Council on a case-by-case basis.
Interesting.
Which means it'll be reviewed. If we come under cyber attack, we could basically go to physical war on a case-by-case basis. That's what he said. That's the quote. He also says allies recognize the impact of significant malicious cumulative cyber activities might, in certain circumstances, be considered as amounting to an armed attack.
Most wars that the country has gotten involved with in our 240-some year history have been on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, no, completely agree, Joe. Yeah, sure.
No, I don't
think this policy changes anything, though, right? Like, that's always been kind of the stance. It's been a tit for tat.
Sure.
Often we'll respond with a cyber response.
I think it's words, right? It's
measure, but
although it's words.
Although I think by again reiterating those words from a better platform than we had a few years ago, arguably, some could argue otherwise, that maybe is bringing that back to the forefront of other folks that are doing that, and a public display of that says maybe we should tone that down a little bit. Who knows? I'm spitballing here, just thinking like, hey, if you say it, it's more.
Are we back to MAD?
What's that?
Are we back to MAD, mutually assured destruction?
Maybe.
Too far?
No,
But
no.
I don't. But I don't think that's what the President Biden's saying.
Right.
He's saying basically if this crap continues, we've got a recourse we could use to attack you. Right?
And I think it's
also
also
we're going to attack you.
Yep.
Not say,
and I think it is a will use on a case by case basis.
Right.
Yeah.
And by saying it again in front of that's one of the big things, from a psychology perspective, that saying something in front of an audience sort of binds you to that. Hey, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to take up an exercise program and I'm going to lose weight. By saying that to a group of people, now, shit, I just said that to our 30,000 plus listeners. Now I got to actually do it.
Right.
So by saying that, hey, we're going to review these on a case by case basis. Well, shit, we might actually have to do this.
Yeah.
And then, is it FUD? Is it misinformation? Is it
just posturing?
Psychology? Is it posturing? Is it, any of those?
Is it warranted? We've already crossed that line before. Does it change anything by taking that stance? We've obviously seen more in the news just because it's there, but
politics and action are two totally different things. Totally. This is politicking, right? That's what this is.
Agreed.
Nitpicking.
Yeah.
Political nitpicking or something.
Something like that. I mean, I think we can all probably get on the bandwagon of that ransomware and cyber attacks are still going to continue against the U.S. Maybe, based on this statement, we could escalate to a physical war if shit got bad enough, right? I mean, that's basically what's being said.
Yeah.
And who knows what bad enough, what's the tipping point, basically.
Yep. Do not taunt Happy Fun Ball.
Then you get into all kinds of other issues with attribution's hard. Attribution's not easy to get right. And then if we're going to do attribution, who's authorized, who's acting alone, what cyber groups correlating, are we handing off access, who's actually doing it?
If we've been pushed to kind of the edge, does the enemy nation states now just kind of fly under that radar? Let's not make shit worse, but we can keep what we're doing. And because there hasn't been a physical attack yet, we might be good, but we push a little too far, that might cross the tipping point, right? So now have they kind of drawn a line in the sand, and now they're staying in that line in the sand? Who knows?
Yep. And Tyler, we've said that as an industry for a long time, that attribution is hard. I think this is true, but as we're having this conversation, I'm saying to myself, attribution is hard for the average to large enterprise. And attribution may not be that hard for something like a nation state.
I'll tell you why. And this is not in all cases, but in some cases, let's just say it's Russia because they pose as aerobic instructors, right? But let's just say a nation state, could be the U.S., has implanted malware and is monitoring that Russian attacker, sees that Russian attacker execute an attack. Now your attribution's much easier. To your point, from corporation standpoint, most of them do not do that same level, of reconnaissance.
Yep.
I mean, there are research organizations and security vendors that may dabble in that space potentially. I'm just again speculating. I have no evidence to that, right? But that that there are ways to really have that attribution, but in giving up that attribution, now you're giving up your position that you had malware on that system that no one had detected before.
Well, now that said, the ability for nation states to gain attribution doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cyber attribution. You have access to their computer and you saw them launching their attacks. No, you have your hooks
in the ISP that computer,
the ISP, the dude sitting next to the guy in the apartment in the Ukraine.
Sure.
The partner is a spy. I've seen too many spies.
You have human. You've got comment. Maybe you have access to the
all of those.
You're in the network, right?
Maybe you have a mole. Maybe you have a mole, right? You flipped someone that is working on that team that's telling you, hey, they're doing this, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to do that.
Trashing is what we called it before dumpster diving became.
Nice.
Yeah.
Trashing. I love it. Lee has a comment there.
Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
I was thinking, if we want to change stories, the number 17 that Paul came in with, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in again?
Yeah, is this like a thing? I didn't. Again, this is one of the ones I did not really dig into. I went in the headline and I saw like step one. Step one, turn off your phone. Step two, turn it back on. I'm thinking of a Saturday Night Live skit that had to do with a box. Right? But turn your phone off, turn it back on, and that'll thwart your phone attackers. I mean,
some of them
technical people can be like, well, yeah, okay, if it's memory resident, sure, that would get rid of it for a period of time, right?
Which is a lot of phone. Like if you're not dealing with a nation state or a paid adversary, right? Like where you're using like one of NSO's tools or something, you're talking about something that is going to be memory resident. Some of those zero-day exploits, like they have the concept of persistence through reinfection, and so you're not necessarily like getting to the kernel level and getting past all the sandboxing is very difficult. And so you don't want your tool obviously living there if it's, and or exploiting things that necessarily don't have to be done if you can just implant that device. And so a lot of these tools are memory resident on the phones because getting to the kernel level is very, very difficult. Hooking a browser with inside of a mobile device, having an app run, having something run in memory, those things are like typically how a lot of the mobile spy apps are, pulling down contacts, chat lists, all real time, and then getting off the device.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is
stop it.
There's a different level of sophistication and skill that an attacker has to remain persistent through reboots on phones. Yep. Probably more so iPhones than Android. In terms of skill level, right? And in that you can, the not as skilled attackers can be kind of booted out by basically just rebooting your phone.
Right. The variable is that, I'll grant them that getting memory resident versus persistent malware on there is going to be easier. The question is after I've done this, how hard is it for the guy to reinfect me? I mean, if it's a zero click, he could detect my device doesn't heartbeat in and just send the message again.
Yep. Right. But then you can rely, if it is an attack that doesn't require a click, Lee, it's a great point. If it does require a click, I mean, then you got to basically phish someone twice, which not out of the realm of possibility. Just saying.
But the second time's harder.
Nah, I've been on a pen test where, I can't open that attachment. Oh, hold on. Let me send it in a slightly different format. Must have gotten corrupt the first time, Then the third time, and then the fourth time. Oh, yeah, I was able to open it. And I'm like, yeah.
Because then you've established trust. You have a dialogue.
Yeah. Oh, I got my C2. I mean, thank you for reviewing my resume.
So I want to throw a little monkey wrench and some stereotyping into this particular article. Consider the source for where this came from. The particular individual offering this security advice for rebooting your phone to protect us from evil phone hackers is Senator Angus King of Maine.
Oh, interesting.
However, he says that he received this advice as part of his membership of the secretive Senate Intelligence Committee.
So are we going up or down?
Yeah, and I don't know. That also might be, you use that the stereotype of someone from Maine maybe being a little more backwoods and not as technically savvy, and a senator on top of that. One could also apply to
that's some serious stereotypes you just laid down right there.
Seriously, you can't get there from here. Pepperidge Farm remembers, but some could also be said for the same for some of the representation from the state of Rhode Island.
Yeah, I mean, no one likes to reboot their phone either, right? We don't like our batteries to die in our phones. We don't like to reboot our phones. I mean, largely, we just let our phones run. Which is an advantage to the attackers.
I was curious, is that a common practice? I don't know. I mean, I never turn my phone off, but I don't know if that's normal or not because I don't consider myself to be normal.
I reboot mine with some regularity recently just because all of a sudden something stops responding, or I've had apps open for a bunch of times and I want to keep Tyler out. Just
I do it when I apply Android security updates, which I have a Google, a Pixel, so those come more often than many other Android devices.
Yeah, and it seems like I'm rebooting quite often now with my my Apple device, just because security updates and
Yeah, but other than the pushed updates that require the reboot, I was just curious. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer or best practice. Should we be?
It depends on your paranoia level.
My wife,
Tyler reflashes his phone every day.
My wife is not paranoid.
Just doesn't mean they're not out to get her.
That's true, but she swears by turning off the phone every night for whatever reason. Somebody told her she heard that it makes the phone last longer. It's better for the health of the phone. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Sure.
I leave my phone on. She turns hers off.
Maybe with older models, that might be
battery.
True. Are you talking about my wife or the phone?
Yes. But Jeff, you're an older model too, so you're a matched pair, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, any piece of hardware has a given life cycle, right? Like you have so many cycles on a chip. You have so many cycles on charge cycles on a battery.
Yeah.
Like that's known. You have so many SSD writes to flash memory. So, like her premise isn't wrong. It's just not something I think most people think about from that standpoint. But I would say her premise is probably more technically accurate than shutting your phone off to keep out of the sights of an APT target.
I mean, you can reboot your phone, excuse me, or turn it off all you want. But if you
wait, Lee's got a comment there.
Yeah. Well, while Paul's coughing, I was going to say that the manufacturers are working very hard on stability so that you don't have to reboot your phone. It'll just keep working.
Good point.
Unless you're updating it. But remember what 12 years ago, if you had to boot your smartphone just to keep it functioning because things would lock up, apps would get stuck. It was not good.
Yep.
Now it just keep clicking.
Wait, I had something for that. If I'm ever on life support, unplug me, then plug me back in and see if that works.
Yep. 2 jump starts and a blood transfusion, right?
That's it. Of course, we can go through all this thing of rebooting our phones, turning off our phones, but if you blurt out the password that was booth.03 when you're a commentator on the Olympics, then all bets are kind of off.
This was the Italians, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Italians that...
I wonder how hard their infrastructure got hammered right then and there.
Pretty
About as hard as that train.
I mean, there was the previous Olympics, right, that were hit hard by an attack. I think that was a Darknet Diaries episode, right, where we chronicled the attacks against the Olympics.
So Sochi, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They massive infrastructure
huge
failure.
Like even during the opening ceremonies, like there was some big Wired articles and stuff on that.
Yep.
I remember back in the day.
I remember all this, and I don't remember any of the details, but I do remember that. It was a big deal back in the day. It's not news.
Maybe they should have just put the password on the computer so the announcer didn't have to say it live on the air.
I mean, yeah.
Or not required a password at all.
Convenience mode, right?
Convenience mode.
There we go. Convenience rocks.
I just thought that was kind of funny.
You remember that fake missile launch on Hawaii a few years back, and the guy from the response center is on TV, and in the back, right over his shoulder, is his monitor with the yellow sticky with the password.
Yeah, that's what was that Super Bowl one in the press corps.
That was one of those too.
Yes.
Also, some fire response had username and password for an anonymous FTP server. Yep. On in a picture on the newspaper type of thing. Yep. I remember those.
My story number. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say my security group at my company cracked my password, so now I have to change my dog's name.
Yep.
Nice.
Happens. My story number 16 kind of had me begging the question. So, like, if your data is all in the cloud, are you totally safe? Are you somewhat safer? So the article makes this... it's interesting because it's really not about giving up root. He does talk about that in the article, how his company revoked his administrator privileges on his Windows systems as a precautionary measure in a security item. But I mean, I'm not ready to give up root on my systems. neither here nor there. And that wasn't really the point of the article. That the point really was like attackers will go after the data, whether it's locally on systems or in the cloud or not, go after it either to steal it, either to ransomware it, both. Basically, they're monetizing on the attack, on the data itself, on your access to the data, right? Whether it's in the cloud or not. So as this article proposes, like, your data could be stored in the cloud. So does that mean defending against ransomware attacks means you have to secure that data in the cloud? And how does an attacker steal, delete, erase, encrypt all of your data in the cloud? I mean, that's possible, but they talk about the security of a Google Chrome device versus other types of devices. And on a Chromebook, largely your data is stored on the cloud. The operating system is very much pared back. Every major computer manufacturer now, I think the article even said Samsung included, is making Chromebook style devices.
Right.
Microsoft, as the author points out, is kind of late to the game in coming up with the, what did they call it? Cloud 365 or something like the Office Cloud, whatever Microsoft called it, right?
Yeah, Windows 11 in the cloud type of thing, your operating system in the cloud.
Yeah, so they came up with that, right? I think as a direct kind of shot over the bow to Google's efforts in this area. But like, do the attackers really care if your data is on the local device or your operating system's on the local device, and whether it's a slimmed down operating system or not? Like, is ransomware just as a style of attack going to move to the cloud? And are we just going to call that ransomware 2.0 or some crap like that 3-4 years from now? We're going to be sitting on the show all a little bit older and more curmudgeon-y and go, oh, ransomware 2.0. Like, yeah, they're not ransomware in the actual operating system in hardware. They're ransomwaring all your data in the cloud.
I mean, they've already done that, right? Like, you've got the Q Locker, which went after NAS, which was also a cloud sync application to a local NAS or over the cloud.
But I still need an initial hook. I need an initial hook. I was kind of playing out the scenario. Let's say,
well, it's just like Linux versus Windows versus Mac, right? Like, if I can get if everybody starts adopting a Chrome OS and I start to evaluate Chrome OS and look for ways to do that, I'm going to probably use a browser hook with some web sockets that then has the ability to interact with local files that are synced to the cloud.
Yeah, but do I need to go through that trouble? Do I just need to get your credentials that you're using to log into that, and then with your credentials, what can I do in the cloud?
Sync them back.
How much damage can I do in the cloud if, let's just say it's a Google user, they've got a Chromebook, I don't care about Chrome OS vulnerabilities, I'm going to phish the user, I'm going to get their creds, I'm going to encrypt everything I can or delete everything I can from the cloud. Can I perform a ransomware style attack like that? Like, are there better mitigations, or Jeff?
So Paul, well, your line of questioning, your line of thought here implies to me that there's some sense that there is something inherently more secure about the cloud. Yes or no? Do you believe that? Do any of us believe that?
I wouldn't say more secure, but better controls, better defenses.
Possible better controls and possible better
control. I'm not saying everyone's going to configure their cloud to be...
I mean, Paul, I've got too many clients right now that are going to the cloud, and the cloud providers are saying, we're not doing anything for you. We're providing, it's not lights and power anymore, but it's
pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. I mean, it's we don't, it's not in vogue to call the cloud a colo anymore. But
then again, like ransomware shifted like to enterprise pretty specific, certain fortune, certain revenue numbers. If you're any one of those, you're going to be an enterprise, and enterprise grade. Like we were talking about this earlier, there's no way to get off of Active Directory. Like, people are throwing Active Directory under the bus. They're like, you can't be secure and have Active Directory. 100% false. Like, there's no good way to manage an enterprise in today's scalability at a large enterprise without Active Directory. Now, there's some like innovative ways with Okta, but like if you're talking about having a full comms communication, having database integration, having single sign-on, having authorization with group policy management, with endpoint management, with an EDR, all under a single management platform, like, good luck. Let me know how you do that with Mac OS. Like, you're going to use some Jamf and some scripts, and that covers like 1% of what Active Directory is doing, or the general Microsoft ecosystem in an enterprise.
I think so let's play out the scenario. I've got Office 365. All of my users have lightweight devices, and their apps and data all live in the cloud. Their devices are just in access to that. As an attacker, my job now is to find an account that has high enough privileges where I can gain access to your cloud infrastructure and encrypt everything, or delete or remove everything, delete it, whatever the attack pans out to be. Remove your access to the data.
Yep. And now you don't have all the visibility, you don't have all the user controls, you don't have all the ACLs, granularity, the GPOs to control the local firewalls, all the things that you would use to mitigate and find that visibility. Like, I'm just going to encrypt everything once I gain access.
Right.
It's
someone's
like,
account.
in my opinion,
if all your apps and data are in the cloud, someone's account has an access to control all of those things, and I just need that account, and then I can do the ransomware style attack, to use as our example, to do the same thing that I would do if you had physical Windows systems.
Yep.
And or lock you out. Like, you look at this, you gain access to that, and now you don't even have to encrypt everything. You put a recovery email on there, you put multi-factor of your own doing, and you lock the admins out and change everybody's password. Yep. You want back into your environment? Pay me some ransom. I don't even have to encrypt things.
So the cloud does not solve the I hate to use the ransomware because it's the right, but the cloud doesn't help you in this scenario. It just shifts how the attack in the infrastructure works.
I mean, it's, in a different context, we've had this conversation before. Different platform, more serverless, more software, less traditional hardware, but all the security fundamental problems still exist. It's, you deal with it in a different way.
Predominantly, you're changing the attack surface. You're not getting rid of the risks. What is it? The identity is the new perimeter. Is that the word? I think Dimitri put that in Discord.
That's the sexy.
Slap yourself, Dimitri.
I'm just going, you've just changed how you have to attack it, Paul. You're not going after a Chrome OS vulnerability. You're going to go after an identity management or access control vulnerability instead, and then you're going to go mess with my data.
I think that's what the author missed, because he says, until we come up with a better solution, our defense against ransomware is in the clouds. When we work in the cloud, the data is encrypted up there and down here. The client software is easy to replace, and the hardware could be anything with a screen and keyboard.
Stop right there.
I knew you were going to take issue with...
Who's encrypting the data in the cloud? It's certainly not done by default.
I'll tell you who's encrypting data in the cloud. No one. They should be, and it's up to the implementer's responsibility to do so. And
it's an option. Costs money. Costs money. I don't. We're not going to do it.
It doesn't. But it doesn't really cost all that much money if you think about it. It's pennies, and
even if it is encrypted in the cloud, someone has an account has access to that key. An attacker is going to change that key, re-encrypt everything, and not give you that key. Like, it doesn't solve. I think the author was trying to pitch this as like it solves this problem, and I think it just shifts it.
I think there was an implication that there's a belief that the cloud is somehow transcendently more secure than what we've got now, and depending on how you look at it, you could make that argument if you're invoking a lot of the features, signing up for a lot of the extra services, but just straight, let's put it in the cloud. It's just somebody else's computer.
Yep.
And you still run into that problem. Like, I still am like not understanding everybody that wants to migrate away. Like, they obviously have not ran an organization of any size, even a couple hundred users. You still run into the ability to have all the functions that you require by going to the cloud. You've just introduced another application at that point, and you still have to have 50 other disparate apps. Like, there's no way to scale outside of Microsoft yet, and I think there'll be contenders. But the places I've seen do it, it is very, very confusing and convoluted, and there's very specific reasons why they did it that I would say 99.9% of organizations couldn't do and will never scale.
But at some point, like, I don't care as much about your Azure AD, but you're an organization and you use Salesforce, and I know you need Salesforce to operate. Therefore, I'm going to own your access to Salesforce, and that's what I'm going to ransom you with.
Yeah.
Yep. So this problem does not go away.
SAS, the two-headed dragon, SAS and single sign-on.
Yeah.
Like, this is a talk I've had written for a while. Like, this is our new two-headed dragon that is going to exponentially cause many more issues.
Your access to all your SaaS applications, Tyler, and I know you've thought of this, right?
Yeah.
Is Okta as an example. And if I'm an attacker and I gain control of your Okta instance in some capacity or any,
2FA that bitch.
And now I control it, right? It's all about not giving attackers control of your infrastructure, and it doesn't matter whether that's a SaaS service in your cloud, their cloud, or on physical workstations that are dispersed across the globe. It doesn't matter. Yep. You have to secure your stuff against these attacks.
Speaking of securing your stuff, I'd love to hit Lee's story number where'd it go? Number 7. Chinese spies are exploiting routers to try hacking French targets, cyber agency says. First, I think there was a whole bunch of fun to be had here because the French cybersecurity agency, the Agence Nationale de la Sécurité des Systèmes d'Information, is called ANSI, and they're fancy because they have an extra S.
Yes.
They ANSSI.
Yeah.
Like this drew me out. And they ANSI with the extra S says that APT31 or Zirconium or Judgment Panda was hacking a whole bunch of routers to target French targets.
And Finland?
Like, what could you possibly have against these countries? The other one that at the very bottom of the article, ANSI said this year also pointed the finger at Russia's sandworm over the breach of a French web hosting and IT firms. Like,
no, that was a thing, though. That was in the book Sandworm.
But they just said earlier this year.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that was a legacy thing.
The timeline doesn't sound right.
No.
Yeah, I want to say that was a thing, though.
Sandworm was like 2012, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
But earlier this year, they pointed the finger at Russia's sandworm. Like, is it because of the 2012 thing, or...
They also said this week the U.S. revisited a series of intrusions at pipeline companies between 2011 and 2013 to attribute the attacks to China, which is interesting. They also say, like, summarize this, C2 was a DNS name to IP association, but I don't know if this was lost in translation, but like if you compromise the router and it says move that traffic into the router network, like you can manipulate that on the fly. In other words, what I think this would play out as, if you look at France and there's a telecom company in France that provides routers to a large percentage of the populace, you find an exploit that gets you on those routers. Your C2 infrastructure, you control their DNS. So I can rotate it on all of those routers and say, this DNS name goes to this. I can control those associations and really like rotate and control my C2 network through the routing infrastructure, not on the local host.
Exactly.
Which I think is pretty interesting.
Exactly. And, I don't know enough about the French, ISPs and so forth.
Well, I'm also thinking of British Telecom.
That was exactly where I was going with that. So if we have any French listeners...
routers come from Verizon does the same thing here in the States and others as well.
And that said, if we have any French listeners and can comment to tell us about the state of French ISPs and whether any of them are national or not, I'd love to hear it because we have some ideas about England with British Telecom and some of that type of stuff. So...
BT Home Hub. That was the legacy.
Yeah, and just even prior to that, the British Telecom and the BBC granting access to television, that you needed to have a license for your television, and their set-top box that granted you access to all sorts of data services as well in the 90s was fascinating. And quote, state-controlled media is amazing, and I love the BBC, but I don't know the politics behind the BBC and what that changes in France, if at any.
I mean, Armenia had this issue during the revolution, right? And they still do within the country. DNS is controlled at the state or ISP level via the country. So there's interesting things that end up happening, can get blocked. Like during the revolution, there were attacks that were blocking entire apps and domains to stop people from posting things to like Telegram that had like people's location. That was leaking sensitive information to the opposition. So when you start talking about DNS and like how it plays out in certain countries, it's not exactly the same as it is in the U.S. And we kind of have to keep that in mind as far as how ISPs and infrastructure works. Yep. And I imagine this is kind of some of the stuff they're alluding to. Maybe they have some more. They gathered some more data that then they correlated to legacy or archive data that may have provided some interesting insights.
Yeah.
Lee, did you have a comment?
I was trying to go back to while you guys were talking to the source for this to see if there was additional information. I mean, some of the stuff you guys mentioned feels like it was literally translated badly from French to English. But years kind of go straight across. Numbers is numbers. But like I said, I'm not finding what I was hoping to find. Sometimes I get some interesting insight in some of these articles that I missed.
Yeah, sometimes.
Like I said, I just thought this was really interesting that here we got France pointing at China for hacking routers. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly. That was my take. Like, what the hell? And then Sandworm.
Yeah, it was interesting how they dragged
that in. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it was
not to toot my own horn or anything, but maybe they should send some of these translations to me. I spent enough time reading French that it was about 2 years ago. I was reading this wireless article, and it was a higher ed journal type of thing, the paper. And I started reading it, and I'm reading it, and it felt slow. And next thing you know, I'm stuck. I'm like, the hell are they talking about? And I was about 2.5 pages in. And the reason why I was stuck, it was because it was a word in French that I didn't recognize, because the document was in French, and I'd gotten 2.5 pages in before I realized it was in French. So, I can read French really well, but je ne parle pas français.
I had two interesting articles about like sometimes web app hacking is pretty straightforward, as in, and it gets even more straightforward. So my story number 2, someone hacked DEF CON 29.
Super awesome.
Alyssa
did mention that, yeah.
Alyssa basically summed up this attack in like WTF insecure direct object reference. Like basically this is the basic thing where you're issued like a gift card number. And if you subtract 1 or add 1 to that number, you get whoever else, had pulled that gift card.
It's DEF CON, it's anonymous. You don't need to sign up for an account.
Right. So that's what they were going for.
We're going to check you out. You don't need to sign up for an account. And here's your ticket and your name and stuff with a domain.com /ticket/event/3791.
Yep. No authentication was required.
Nope.
You basically the person who wrote the article and disclosed this vulnerability subtracted 1 from his ticket ID number
3790.
And 3790, and he got the previous person's DEF CON ticket. Now he did disclose this to both DEF CON and the vendor who was providing this
disclosed
service.
it to DEF CON, who interacted with the vendor that DEF CON had provided.
Guest manager was the vendor.
Yeah. So
they did fix it very, very quickly.
I want to say within 48 hours.
And implement basically a random token.
Do you know, is DEF CON and Black Hat using any of the same back-end applications or
separate.
agency?
Yeah, they are separate now.
They're separate organizations.
Because the Black Hat system is hosted this year. I won't reveal publicly, but it has issues.
Jeff Moss, having started both, has sold Black Hat, the corporate version, to CWP Media.
It's I think it's owned by Informa.
Okay.
Now.
UVM.
UVM, but I think UVM is owned by Informa. It changed hands.
Yeah, a bunch of times, but
I think UVM got acquired by Informa. I believe
he sold Black Hat many years ago, and maintains exclusive control of DEF CON.
Right. Yeah. So there's completely separate entities now.
Yes.
The other one was the 11-year-old that finds a loophole in the Newegg app to buy PC graphics cards. Now, like anyone
why the hell didn't you find that, Paul? You've been trying
believe
to
me, Lee, I wish I had found that. And I was like, when I read the headline, I was like, I can't wait to read this. Like, it's going to be a really
Did you try it real quick?
No, it's been patched. But so anyone that's tried to find an RTX 30 series or 3000 series GPU, you've been down a really horrible, discouraging road.
Expensive.
And if you do find one of the new RTX 30 series GPUs, you're typically paying a 30% on average, roughly, higher price tag because someone has written a bot or leveraged a bot to be able to buy these as soon as they become available online, and then reselling them at a markup, making around, on average, I would estimate $300-400 per card. Because I think the amazing thing about the RTX series is what you would pay MSRP for that card is, and what you get is amazing value. Right. Like the computing power you're getting on these is just amazing. If you're building a rig for gaming, video processing, video editing, obviously being a podcast that does video, we do a lot of video editing. So we were like right on top. We were all about this, new series of cards. And the only way you can really get them at a reasonable cost, or that's debatable, is to buy a PC that's put together that has the card in it.
So in this case, it was what, Newegg?
It was Newegg.
Yeah, Newegg. Outside of their lottery system, you could get an RTX 3090 if you were building a system
correct
that had it installed, and they were the ones assembling the system for you.
And you probably paid a little bit of a premium for that.
Yep. But what this kid found is that if you were using the mobile app, you could just start the system build with the video card.
Yep.
Add it to your cart and check out.
With just the card.
Yeah.
PC Builder, build your PC video card section on only the mobile app.
Yep.
So as many of us have seen as pen testers, the mobile app interfaces with the API and has different levels of access and functionality and security.
The mobile app is just a glorified interface to your website and their API, which often has significantly fewer security controls.
And so there was an 11-year-old that found the loophole. He bought one card. To his credit, he's like, look, I bought one card for myself to build my PC. Yep. I didn't resell it. I didn't go buy 10 cards and resell them. I bought one. And then, I believe he disclosed the flaw, and they did fix it.
The best part that I thought about this was that, like, he showed it to, he did it, and he showed it to his dad in the cart. And his dad was like, check out.
Go get one, dude.
Get it.
I mean, you're not, and you're not stealing any, like you're paying whatever they were charging for that card, and legitimate, you made the transaction.
Yep.
You should get that card, right? And again, he didn't like resell it and didn't buy 10 of them.
My understanding from reading the article was that the reporter also exercised the flaw to confirm the story. And he was the one that reported it to Newegg.
Okay.
That was my read of the story.
Gotcha.
But
talk about like an even easier way. Like the first one was a very easy insecure direct object reference. This one was even easier in that you just had to use the mobile app.
Well, I don't know if it was easier. Like,
no, you're right. I think the it requires some ingenuity.
But insecure reference, I'd just go get all 3,000 people that are registered, get their barcodes, and show up at the front desk to get my badge and go, boop, okay, that one hasn't been used yet. Thanks. I mean,
right.
Boop, oh, that one hasn't been used yet. I mean, I got 2 badges.
Yeah.
And you know what those electronic badges are going to sell for on eBay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna buy one. And the sad part is this is arguably the first DEF CON I will likely not have attended, maybe even virtually.
In a long time, Larry.
In forever.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't sign up to get a badge. Like, I want one.
They look cool. I've seen pictures.
Yep. I want one. And you turn that thing into a keyboard and you put keys on it. Like, I'm interested. So, Yep.
Speaking of DEF CON, I did not remember PunkSpider. Does anyone remember PunkSpider?
No.
So apparently PunkSpider is like the Shodan, but collects vulnerabilities on websites. And from what I gleaned from the article, publishes them publicly, right? Like Shodan, which scours the web and then has like a searchable database of like, here's what's out there. PunkSpider did the same thing, except collected vulnerabilities in websites and just made a Shodan kind of searchable interface for like, here's all the vulnerable websites that are out there and their vulnerabilities. So there's two, and so what the DEF CON talk is going to be is a reboot of this tool and a re-releasing of this tool or this website that catalogs these vulnerabilities. Now, there's two opposing views, right? On one hand, someone's quoted as saying, making them public might be the thing that pushes administrators to fix these vulnerabilities. On the other hand, obviously, it needlessly calling out a site insecurities without proof the companies respond accordingly and make necessary changes to protect themselves could be an issue. I was curious where everyone kind of falls on this. Should we create a public database of all websites that have, very specific vulnerabilities in hopes that they will fix them, which putting that information out there to the public means we as defenders, as good people, bad people, we all have access to that information. Yeah. Yes. Well, the bad people use that to do harm, whereas the good people could use that to secure things. And, that one commenter going, well, the companies do need some way to respond, like a responsible disclosure. I don't. Right. I'm all about the information being free. Like I always kind of side on the information should be free side of things. However, I do also believe that if you do have a vulnerability, you should have the opportunity to respond, and that's where you can really muddy the waters.
Yep.
How much time do you give them to respond? That sort of thing.
Yeah. And so, I'm thinking about this. So, like when I first read the article, I saw the names, and it wasn't the full names, and I saw Caceres, and I'm like, Max? No, it's Alejandro. And then I saw JH, and I immediately thought Jihadix, which is one of our longtime friends of the podcast. I'm like two people we know are going to make it big because of this. And then it was totally not them.
No, there is a company, Complex, that are behind these. Yeah,
yeah. You have to figure out how to pronounce that with the Q's.
Alejandro Caceres and Jason Hopper. Are behind the Complex that are releasing this. Yeah.
And the one thing that I think is interesting, and that they mentioned, that this could be a huge thing for bug bounty folks looking for stuff. Yeah. And my immediate thought was, no, it will not be a good thing for bug bounty people, because if they're smart, they will find vulnerabilities in these websites and the types of software, and they will automatically submit for bug bounty stuff for these things.
I was thinking that, Larry. That's how you fund this project. If you've got automated software that can find these web vulnerabilities, you correlate that with, does the company have a bug bounty?
Yep.
Whether it's through BugCrowd, HackerOne, or a private bug bounty
whether
program.
the company itself or the provider of the service, like if it's a WordPress thing.
Sure. Yeah. Do they have? Yeah. And automatically submit it. But do you do that before it becomes public, or that's the thing? Well, I would be more 100% on board if, but notification is tough. Like you've got this crawler. It finds a vulnerability in a website. How do you then figure out who to contact for that website in an automated fashion to go, you've got 14 days to fix this before it gets submitted to a bug bounty or becomes public?
No, you submit it to the bug bounty.
Or submit to the bug bounty.
Because I think that would be a fairly easy lookup to do.
Right. Doesn't need to be public. If they have a bug bounty, I'm going to submit it to their program.
The question that I have is, and my question is, what happens if it's a false positive?
Yeah.
And you submit it to the bug bounty.
Right.
And you know what my comment is? Fuck it, not my problem. Somebody else has got to confirm that shit, not me.
Yeah, I mean that's
If
part of
I've
the
got a bug bounty, I'm seeing stuff coming in. I guess me looking in PunkSpider to see if somebody just pulled it out of there.
But maybe PunkSpider delays the release for 30 days.
I don't think that's the case here. I think they're just putting it out there.
Well, I still look, knowing that it was, if somebody said I just found it and it's there 30 days after, I'm going, wait a minute.
Yep. So all I can say is, here's your $1 million idea. How many $1 million ideas have we had in the course of this podcast? That we've given away for free. Create an engine that finds web vulnerabilities in automated fashion, submits them to bug bounty programs, and
profit.
Yeah.
Question, profit.
Yep.
I didn't do it.
That would be awesome.
Yep. Tyler's like having some ideas, like thinking about his coders in India right now.
I was deliberately trying to troll Paul with my number one story, where Discord is now an essential tool for hackers.
Dude, and
I know Slack is also used similarly.
Tyler had some great comments on this too, sort of privately.
Yeah, and I mean, in defense of Discord, by the way, they went and got rid of those malicious URLs. They found
Discord is doing a really good job in my assessment of, I hate to use the word policing, right? But helping them helping themselves, enabling themselves to be the most secure platform as they could be, to be a safe platform, to remove pornography, to remove malicious attacks, malicious URLs, and things of that nature. I mean, they're really trying. And as you grow and scale in a business like that, it is hard. It just gets more difficult and more difficult. I mean, look at YouTube, right? You think about how much. Someone I work with was talking about like the storage requirements of YouTube. And then there's
AWS, baby.
And there's statistics out there about, like how much content is uploaded to YouTube every minute and what that translates to in storage. And then how do you validate that the content that's being uploaded is not malicious, is not pornographic, is not illegal? That is like one of the hardest problems in tech to solve today.
Honestly, I think Facebook is also struggling with this problem. That they just had a study that...
aerobics instructors, right, from Russia. They were posing as aerobics instructors on Facebook's platform, in like lurking in groups for dieting and exercise, and then building up a persona, and then sending an email that was like, hey, I'm doing a survey on dieting and exercise, please click this link. And they were trying to fish people. It was very to defend. So they were specifically targeting defense contractors in this campaign.
On the converse, like the content in that, I Facebook a lot on my phone in the evening when it's time to relax, and you do the Facebook video. And I typically don't do like the video or the gaming alerts. And the gaming alerts a lot have been lately like something PUBG, and like this is the kid stuff I don't understand. Like I'm an old man now, and I turned on like PUBG is playing something or other, and it was some Asian lady washing her dishes in her sink with her titties hanging out, and I'm like, this is relevant to my interests. But like, how does Facebook deal with this?
Well, you notice that if anyone talks about a COVID-19 vaccine, you get the warning from Facebook. I mean, they're doing their best to try and police the content, but
like they're policing the COVID content, but they're not policing the titties content as well. As
because how do you do that?
But in the video, not imagery, they are. Video, not so much.
Which any platform is going to get abused. This one was interesting because it's C2, right? Like all platforms are C2 platforms.
Well, so Tyler,
Slack.
Tyler, in this particular example, they were not using, my understanding, Discord as C2. They were using Discord as a delivery mechanism.
They're phishing. They're basically phishing on Discord.
But Discord is a C2, which you brought up. I'm like, oh yeah.
So Slack is a C2. Anything that has an API, anything that is a high integrity, trusted platform and that has bots or API capability, like I can build a bot, I send traffic to a message thing, my API picks it up, and now I've got dynamic C2 with functionality to send commands in either direction from an app.
It'd be an interesting
And that's a
experiment,
high fidelity.
to build that and see if Discord like takes down your server or your user account, and they don't. Yeah.
That's already built. Like it's used, like just like IRC's been used forever. Slack's used, GitHub, Gmail, O365, EWS. I mean, you name it. That's being abused as an exfil channel and a C2 channel. Like those are all integrated into anybody that's doing anything custom.
Yeah, I mean, Discord's just a new IRC, basically.
Yeah,
it is.
And isn't the advice coming back, secure your accounts? Pretty much, whether it was GitHub, IRC, Slack, Discord, they're all like, make your account more secure, use multi-factor, whatever.
Yep. That multi-factor is kind of big though, but I've seen a lot of you get a lot of these multi-factor attacks, right? And if you end up getting tricked and you're communicating and you provide, we send a text, right? And it says you've enrolled in the Microsoft Emergency Authorization. Please respond back yes or no if you want to be enrolled. They respond yes, and you say you just received a code, but you just did a forgot password. And you're waiting for them to send you the code that they receive next. Like, hey, you just received a code. Please type that here. Like now I'm in on multi-factor. There's a lot of ways to bypass multi-factor. Yeah. And once multi-factor's bypassed, the problem is recovering accounts is very difficult. I've been working on this with Facebook quite a bit. And there's a ton of people getting their accounts hacked. And there's a new recovery email and a new multi-factor token put on there, even if they had multi-factor. And that's
even
a problem.
If it's a YubiKey,
there is
even
no
if it's
way to recover it.
Because I like fake.
I like the YubiKey because it's hardware.
Yes, and I like that Facebook and some others support the YubiKey because that's what I use for multi-factor. But when you go to Discord, they don't yet, to my knowledge, support the multi-factor token. But you're saying, Tyler, is in some cases it doesn't matter. And all software has vulnerabilities. If you find the right suite of vulnerabilities, right, you can change all that stuff.
Now, arguably, Paul, you say the hardware token. What would your feeling be if they supported a software token?
They do,
like Authy or Google Authenticator or something like. Would that be?
Yeah, and so that's like a usability thing for me. I want to have one multi-factor suite for all of my stuff, right? Like, I hate that I have to have email as a second factor, text messaging as a second factor, an authenticator app, and a YubiKey, and then go, wait, what am I logging into, and what's my second factor? Like, I want everyone
or you can abuse one or the other, right? Like maybe you have a backup.
It's
on
a backup.
You don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
The danger with the physical token is, and I think why it's not widely supported across all these platforms is because you got to be a pretty savvy user to be able to, first of all, put the investment in. I was actually just looking at someone else. I was on you'll see an episode coming up of Privacy Please, and their question was, if you had $100 and you had to implement a data security and privacy program for your company, what would you do? And my first thought was, I would just buy YubiKeys. And then I went to Amazon, I looked them up, and they're like, they're $50 a piece. I'm like, shit, that's only going to cover two of my users, right?
Well,
one user, disaster recovery.
To your point, Tyler, one user, right? So I think, and granted, YubiKey has been very nice in years past, and they have gifted me multiple YubiKeys, largely because I'm a security podcaster and they want me to talk about it, and here I am talking about them. But I do like their solution in their hardware. I think it's very sound.
Hey,
and they make a great product.
Hey, YubiKey, you sent me one many, many years ago, and I don't know where it is, but I'd love to
have another one.
I'd love to use it and report back.
It's a good point. Like, budget and savviness have to be there to have. I'd be comfortable with, I have probably 4 or 5, right? I would only be comfortable with 3. Now you're $150 in, plus the inconvenience of having to have that key and the different formats of that key, right? I've got the USB-C version that does my phone. Some of them support NFC. Some of them don't. Like, what ports do I have on my computer and or my phone or tablet to be able to do that, right? So now you've got Lee's holding up his
dual YubiKeys.
Like YubiKey kind of thing.
That's 3 of them.
Yeah, you got 3 of them there. Not every user is going to go through all that trouble. However, I really like having a physical token. as part of my second factor. And I'd like that to be universal, but I want to live in a utopian society in multi-factor where we have that.
I'm with you, Paul. I don't like having to have all those different factors, but I have to look in the mirror and say, look, dude, there's a multi-factor option. Enable it. Get over it. Because if you don't do it, it's going to be worse.
Yep. It's true.
And I hate it, but whatever. I got to get over it.
Did you guys listen to I believe right now it is the most recent Darknet Diaries podcast? The pizza, I think he called it the Pizza Dilemma. And this person, I'll set I don't want to spoil all of it, but basically this person, not an IT security practitioner, more of a developer, IT kind of person, right? Tech savvy, but savvy enough to register handles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, that not like 3-letter ones, but they didn't want to give away what it was, but they basically said it was like a 1-word animal name. So like turtle or fox or whatever. They didn't disclose what it was, right? And they had registered that early on in a lot of the, like, as Instagram was becoming popular, they were savvy enough to recognize that, hey, Instagram could be a thing. I'm going to go register turtle, right, as my handle. And then all of a sudden they were getting SIM swapped and emails and harassed and all that stuff. And then even though they put a PIN code on their SIM card, they were still getting around that. Then they were attacking their family. Then they were sending them pizza at random times, including 11:50 p.m. at night, receiving pizza. Because it's cash on delivery, the pizza service had an online ordering system. Therefore, I can send them a pizza. And they're like, look, the pizzas are going to continue until you give us that whatever handle it is on Instagram, because I can turn around and sell that turtle handle on Instagram.
What was that I heard?
On it wasn't like a dark web website, but there was like a marketplace for social media handles, and I could get $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, whatever.
What was that quote that I heard from Quadling earlier today? Was the beating with the $5 wrench will continue until you give me the password. The pizzas will continue until you give me that account.
Then they started sending pizzas to his parents' house. Like it got serious. I thought it was really sad. I'll put this call out to the community that it flies below the radar of authorities, federal authorities, law enforcement.
Currently.
Also, they alluded to the fact that the person executing this particular attack was someone who was working in cybersecurity. And I'm like, no, that does, like, we'll police ourselves at that point. Like, don't let that shit happen anymore. Because that was just it was a dark moment for me when I finished that episode, and I was like, this shouldn't happen. What's your recourse? Local police? FBI? If not, then we're forced to police ourselves. I'm like, that just left a bad...
It's like that don't F with cats.
What's don't F with cats? Oh, yes. So, yeah, kind of similar to that now that you say that. It was a documentary.
I don't know this one. And nobody could hear Johnny saying the documentary.
It was a documentary, Don't F with Cats,
TLDR on the Don't F with Cats.
Tyler, I'll defer.
Cybersecurity, like someone posted some sick videos and like the OSINT community went crazy and hunted this guy down.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Good. I didn't have... did I have any more... I don't think I had any more stories.
It's a good time to rot. Good time to rot. Good time to rap.
Yeah. Wrap up.
Yeah, Sam just posted Slipknot and Rot and Rap and Not and Nat.
Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out of here.